Good morning. This video today is going to be about annotated bibliographies, where you will be creating one this week with the sources that you will be finding for our topic. So I wanted to really go into the purpose of an annotated bibliography as well as how to create one. The chapter in your textbook this week will be chapter 17 on annotated bibliographies. Definitely read through this. Not only does it give you the ins and outs of the annotated bibliography, but it also gives you an example of what one looks like. So definitely you want to make sure that you're using that resource. Annotated bibliographies are basically that opportunity for you to actually start the research process. You're getting into your sources. So your first step, after finding your topic, asking your questions, then you have to start finding some viable sources, credible sources, in order to create the writing project that is being required of you. Sometimes the questions that you need to answer will be given to you by your professor. Read the instructions on any of the given assignments. But then I also will, what are things that I want to know about a given topic? It could be, if one is being given to me where I don't have the opportunity to, decide my own topic, it could be, finding out more about it. Whatever questions are evoked. So this week, you guys, it's COVID, and there's a lot of different questions, not just on COVID itself, but all the things that are surrounding it. The masks. Is it taking your liberties and your rights away as an American citizen? Or is it, for health reasons? Where's that line? Has it been handled correctly or not? The schools, totally hit the schools. There are definitely two sides of that argument. I was thankful that I was never a part of those conversations, because that was a very, you were going to lose whichever way. But again, all these decisions that are being made are based because people have different perspectives, and they have different stances, and that's okay. And we're going to get into argument writing later on, but what we're looking at is different perspectives. Everyone has an opinion, but the thing is, where did they get the information in order for where they formed their opinion? And that's really what synthesizing that information, getting into it, finding truths, being able to respond to it. Again, there's always some response to when you're doing research. How, what did you find from that? How does that affect you as you're continuing to move forward? That's what research is. It's helping you again to create your personal ideology, your beliefs, how you vote, how you raise your family, what jobs you get, that kind of thing. So this week with annotated bibliographies, I kind of want to take you back to high school. And I had taught high school, and one of the practices that I always did with all my students when I gave a research project is, after they find their sources, they had to create note cards. And they had to, for my particular class, you had to have 10 note cards per source, one idea per note card. And I did that purposely. One is, is there information in that source? Is there viable information in that source? You want some core sources, and then you have, your outline ones. And if you really couldn't find any information in it, then you have to ask yourself, was this a good source or not? And so with note cards, you're having to read, you're having to take notes, things that stand out to you, things that are important. The other piece of that is, once you've got all your note cards, you can really determine at that point, do each one of these sources have a different perspective? What are they bringing to the table? Because again, if all your sources are basically saying the same thing, like I said in the video, on evaluating sources, then they're probably not good ones. You need to find different perspectives. And so going along that same line, an annotated bibliography, you still have to get into your sources. You have to make notes. And then instead of turning in note cards on this level, we ask you to make a summary of the information that you've extracted from your sources. That tells us as professors that you had an opportunity to engage with whatever it is you're reading and being able to extract information. We do that again to kind of help with that timeline. So, you're not trying to create a 10, 15, 20 page research paper at the last minute. And so we do those as kind of like those little markers to make sure that you're staying on track in order to create a project down the line. Time management. Okay. So this week you've decided your sources. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to get, look into them, make some notes. If you're using information off of the databases from the online library, I personally like to print them off because I'm going to annotate them. I'm going to highlight the things that stand out to me, ask questions, that kind of thing, because I want to get into the material. Once you've identified the information, you've read through the article, you need to read your sources, especially on an assignment like this. It's only 3 sources. Your articles are not long. You should be able to read them. Research is a little bit different when you start getting into books and it gets bigger. That's where your table of contents comes in. That's where your index comes in, because now you're being more focused through the questions that are being required of you to ask, and then questions that you've actually come up with. And so when you use the table of contents or the index, it actually helps you go right to those areas in those larger books that you're really not going to read the whole thing. And so that helps to maximize that a little bit. But with the articles, again, make sure that there's something that's usable and that you can read and run through easily. A couple things on the articles: make sure that if it's a study, what was their base, how many people were involved in the study, where was it conducted, who was conducting it, what's their credentials, were they credible? And so there's a lot of things that go into that. Again, asking those questions. Go back to that evaluating sources, read through that. That will help you through that process. So basically, all you're doing with an annotated bibliography is, once you have all your notes that you've extracted from that source, these are things that mean something to you, then you're basically writing a summary on all of that. It's an overview of the information that you've extracted from those sources. With an annotated bibliography, they're not long. Usually, if I was with academic formatting, with MLA, which is what yours needs to be in, it's usually like 2 a page. Again, it really depends upon the extent of the research that you're doing. So those lengths of those annotated or those summaries of that information can vary. So it can be anywhere from a paragraph, but again, we're going overview, and it really is allowing us to see what information that you've extracted. So this week, kind of going into chapter 17, I do want to go over some information with you. On the first page, on page 251, at a glance, it's for academic projects. Keeps track of your sources, keep track of your sources from day one. Choose a system of documentation early and learn how to record every item you use in the proper form. Could be that you just have a notebook, something that you're going through. Write down your bibliographies. Write the sources down, where you found them. If it's a website, what that website is. Now, again, I cannot stress, if you are using those databases on the online library, you cannot use the URL. They change often. And so that's why last week with the critique, and I said, I need a copy of the article, but do not give me the URL for EBSCO, JSTOR, or whatever it is that you're using, Eric, because it's not a viable link. There's no way that I'm going to be able to go back and look at that article if I needed to. So, and I still had some people that did that. Please make sure that you listen to that. That's not that's not for just me. That's anyone. But I do like to go back into sources every now and again just to see what's going on, and if it interests me. And that's really why you have a bibliography page, not just to give credit, but if somebody wants to follow up and look deeper and maybe read your article because it interests them, they should be able to get to it. That's why we have that's why you have all that information in your bibliography, is so someone can go back and find the source that you used. So use a database software, note cards to compile all necessary bibliographic data and materials that you use. If you are comfortable with note cards, do it. I usually would just get a notebook and I would write the source at the top of the page, and then I would just start taking notes. Again, that's really going to be on you as far as what works for you. What do you need? I usually have to have things in front of me where I'm bullet pointing things, and that way when I'm going to create my annotated bibliography, I have all that information there, and then I can write my summary because it's right there. I'm not having to flip through pages of an article or a text or whatever. Write down your comments on sources as you read them, annotating. Record two types of comments separately, those that describe the source and those that evaluate it. And examine models of annotated bibliographies in the field you are working to get a feel for proper content and form. That's an important one. Depending, especially when you're getting into your upper level work, again, every professor likes things a specific way. They're looking for something very specific. It is extremely important that you know what your professors are asking for so that you can give that to them. If they're asking for it, they're looking for it, which means if they don't see it, then that's a point reduction. Just logic dictates there. All right, so understanding annotated bibliographies. Okay, so the driver on this and how you organize your annotated bibliographies, and you know the characteristics of a works cited page or resource page, any bibliography page. They call different things depending upon what format that you're using. But the one constant is that they're alphabetized by the author's last name. Or if an author is not present, which I strongly discourage, because to me, if you can't find a name of someone who has done research, then that to me takes away credibility. But there are some times where it's a web page and it's editors and whatnot, then it would be the website. And that, again, look into that and really how to format those. Moral of the story is you stay with the organization of how the bibliographies are presented on the works cited page. Okay. And then basically all you're doing is you're going to have your bibliography with your hanging indent, strict double space, and then below it is the summary of the information that you've extracted. Hit enter, which is a strict double space, do your next bibliography. Underneath it, enter, so it's bibliography, summary of information, bibliography, summary of information, bibliography, summary of information. Make sure your bibliographies are in chronological order or alphabetical order rather. Okay. Begin with an accurate record of research materials. They talk about MLA and APA. I haven't heard that before. Again, depending upon what your major is, you probably could add Chicago into that. Again, that's going to be a part of your instructions and the requirements for your specific professors. For me, because we're in English and this is more of that liberal arts, we do MLA. And it talks about works cited. All right, make certain a record to record every item you will need to create an accurate citation. Read through that. That's important. And it even gives you the things that you need. But the things that you need, that's a part of the bibliography. Now, this is where online Word and actual Microsoft Office Word differ. Because managed sources, you will not have on an online Word because it cannot support that function. That's how it was communicated to me. I use the resources that are available. If you go into the managed sources where you are actually keying in your bibliographies, it gives you all the sites. The first box of that is, what type of source is it? Is it a book? Is it web? Is it a peer review article? Whenever you click that, then this box comes up and I'll have these little red asterisks. Those are the necessary items that you have to have. Those are your baseline items that you have to have in that bibliography. Now, a couple things that we add, because there's a little box at the bottom left, it says expand. You want to click on that because with the exception of the online library, so if you get a web source, that is on the internet that you could actually access by clicking on that link. Include the URL. You also need to fill out the box that says medium. And we talked about this in class. Medium is where you will put web or print. And the reason for that is that if you do have professors that are going to make a requirement of you have to have X amount of print sources and X amount of internet sources, they need to be able to distinguish them. And especially in the technology age that we are currently living, you can actually have print sources that you found on the web where they have scanned it in, and you're actually getting a copy of it. Even though you're viewing it through the web, the original format was print, and so it will count as a print item. But if you do not put the medium in there and I see a URL, I'm going to make an assumption that it's automatically web. Get in those habits, even if it's not required, because you will have some that do require that. In fact, on your final project, I am going to require print as opposed to internet. And mainly because research is not just online anymore. I mean, you have to know how to use your resources. Go to the library, getting a book, articles in newspapers. If you're doing a topic that, spans decades, the original information was newspapers. Well, the original format was print, even though you're able to view it in an online format. But the original format would be print. So you do need to make sure that you fill out medium. And I'm looking for it. I'm telling you I'm looking for it. So please make sure that you fill that out. If you need to make a sticky note, don't forget medium. Okay. But definitely with the URL, and if it was an original print source, but you did find it online, I would put the URL there so you can access it easy. So it's not just for the person reading it, it's also for you to go back into information if you're needing it. But it goes through that. Describe or summarize the content of each item on the bibliography. Okay, that's where your notes come in. You can have 10 people read the same information. It does not mean that all 10 people are going to come back with the same things that attract them, get their information, get their curiosity or their interest. That's for you. Your notes need to work for you, and you need to be responding to whatever it is that you're reading. So you're going to make notes, and you make a summary off of that. Okay, and I don't know why I'm thinking about this, but I will tell you. Now, online, a lot of times you can find summaries of information, texts, whatever. And I've had students in the past will try to write a summary off of a summary. Please don't do that. One, you're gypping yourself. You really are hurting yourself. Because one, a summary is an overview, which means you're not going to get specific information, for one. But it falls flat, and it's kind of like cheating. But the bigger piece of it is you will gain nothing from it. And so you're going to go through this process of getting the sources, and you're going to write your little annotated bibliography. But then when it really comes to expounding on that information, because you're going to need to go back to your specific notes, because those notes are going to go into the body of your paper, and that's going to be your evidence. And if you didn't have that on the front end, you're kind of screwed, So research is about how you're responding to the material. Did you get credible sources? What did you read? Does it confirm what you had initially thought? Does it change your opinion? That kind of thing. Assess the significance or quality of the work. Offer a brief appraisal of the item, responding to the authority through thoroughness, length, relevance, usefulness, age. Again, now, as far as age is concerned, depending on the topic. Now, again, we're doing COVID. Unless it's part of one of those conspiracy theories that, you hear that this is not something that was just cooked up last year in China. That has been, maybe there's, I've heard that theory that the government has been doing testing on COVID for decades and blah, blah, blah. One, is it a theory, or is there factual information that goes behind it? So again, like I said, everything that deals with government, you're usually going to have a conspiracy theory behind it. But the deal is that, you can make a claim, but if you don't have sufficient evidence to support it, and that could be part of it. This is one of the claims that have been made about coronavirus based on the research. it, is not factual. So, and that's a response to the information. You're responding to it. Explain the role of the work plays in your research. All these things are things that you can put in that annotated bibliography. I'm basically looking for a summary of the information that you've extracted. The things that they're asking you to include, that's very detailed. If you're wanting to go in that, that's fine. But again, my main concern is that you are extracting that information and then you're writing a summary on it that tells me that you've really gotten into that information. The last thing that it has on page 255, keep summaries and assessments brief. This is not a retelling. Again, a summary by nature is an overview. It is not specific, super specific. That is what the body is. Right now, you're just giving me an overview of the information that you've extracted. Why is this important to this topic, that kind of deal. Follow directions carefully. Please make sure that you're reading the instructions of what's being required. I'm verbally going through it now, where it is, I want you to go through, take notes, and do a summary on those notes. Now, that does not mean that you've taken notes and you're just going to string each note. That's not an overview. That's a patchwork. So read it. What is the overall feeling of the information that you're pulling? And really, why is it significant? And I do want to know, why is it significant? Okay. And then on page 256, it gives you an example of what the annotated bibliography, and this is the way that I want it set up. Notice that it is a strict double space. There's a hanging indent. Just to kind of make sure you know what a hanging indent, the first line of the bibliography is up against left margin. All subsequent lines of that bibliography are indented. You hit tab. If you go in the MLA packet that I have put in your resource folder, I tell you how to do that and how to set that up and how to put in hanging indents and how to format your paper. Until you can do it where it's second nature, it's okay to have those notes out. That's okay. Until you can, you can do it without looking at the notes. I promise you, either by the end of this semester or somewhere in your career where you'll be doing it enough, you're not going to have to think about it. But it's always good practice to know how to do something manually, and that way it really does take a stressor away so you can focus on content. So I hope that helps as far as creating that annotated bibliography. You're doing 3 sources this week. It really should only be a couple pages. 2 to 3 pages tops. But really, I mean, if you're kind of doing that paragraph deal, it would probably be like 2 pages. Because the bibliography is with your annotation, typically you will have professors that will not require a works cited page. I am requiring a works cited page, mainly because I need to make sure you know how to set up a works cited page where you are following the MLA characteristics. And this is that first opportunity for you, or the second actually, because you just had one last week, but this is your first opportunity with multiple sources. Please make sure that you are following those guidelines in that MLA packet that I provided for you guys. Again, I'm going to be making notations on format and content. When you get your graded work back, please go back to the comments and make sure that that you see, because again, if you have point reductions, you better be going back in because you're going to know why I did a point reduction. But I'm going to bring things to your attention, which means in the future, you got to fix it. So if you're seeing that there were areas that were incorrect, make notes of it so you don't make that error again. Again, though, if you're following the instructions that I have in that MLA, I walk through it step by step. I give you pictures of what it looks like. Does your stuff look like what I have put out there for you? Okay. So, but that is about it. Oh, another thing about when you're writing your summary. This is not personal. This is third person. You are basically reporting on this information. You're kind of like stepping out of it. You're just taking the information. So I'm very clinical in a way. So there is no first or second person. There's no personal I, second person you. we, our, any of that. It has to be third person. Again, if you think of yourself like a reporter, you're just giving me the facts, then you'll be in a good place. Okay, it's very objective in nature. Academic writing is objective in nature. There's not a lot of, even though you're giving your response to it, it still has to be in an academic format, which means there's no first or second person. So that is it. For how to create an annotated bibliography. I strongly encourage you guys to read chapter 17. It gives you an example. And, if you have any questions, let me know in class. Hopefully you are starting this process. So by the time we get together this week, that we can make that more meaningful for you. So you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll see you guys in class.